Hello and welcome to the behind the scenes of Lapis Lazuli Part 1, Clean and Acoustic Guitar, EQ, and Layering. First of all, I want to go over some things. If you want to know how to record some guitars, I do have a quick demo on how to record just an electric guitar, how I do it, and a couple of different methods on another video that will be linked below. And I also am using a specific digital audio workstation, a DAW as we sometimes call it, or DAW for short, in Sonar Professional, which I've been using for many, many years, almost a decade actually. I've been using Sonar and or Cakewalk products. Cakewalk introductory products are fairly inexpensive. This one cost me $20 a month since I opted to do the subscription service. So just so you're aware, that's just one of the things that we do here. So there you go. And it doesn't have to be this exact program. And, you know, EQ basically, and some of the programs I'm using basically work the same way. Not really going to get into it here. There's too much for this video, and I've got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's get going here. I have before you right here, as you can see, and I'll get into some of these things in a minute. But basically, all you really need to be worried about is that I have and there's many. I have about 30 tracks in this total, but we're just starting with the first 3 that I really conceived of for Lapis Lazuli when I was doing it, because I knew that I wanted to do it 80s style, and I wanted to emulate that big layered, we'll get into that, guitar sound that you always hear on old late 70s, early 80s recordings, or actually even mid 70s recordings. Some of my favorites being like Closer to Heart by Rush, and a few others. There's plenty of examples, but that one just came to mind. That's one I was thinking of when I did this, because there's so much cool stuff going on recording wise with that. Things we're going to want to pay attention to today are, of course, the EQ. And this is all we're paying attention to today. We're not really worrying about anything else. The EQ, the panning, which is right here, which we'll get into in a bit. And we really want to pay attention to the fact that each track is an individual performance. And that's how we're getting the sound that we want to get. So what we'll do first is let's just listen to, and I recorded these acoustic guitars the same exact way. So we'll just listen to one acoustic guitar panned center, and how, like, theoretically you would have wanted to approach it if that's all you were going to do. And this is without any EQs or processing, so let's just have a listen. You know, that's pretty good. So there's one sound, right? And so what most people would do, and this is the layering part first, and how layering works, is you basically are getting a sound to be fuller by playing it multiple times. I know that sounds obvious, but you're playing the same part multiple times with slightly different sounds that are kind of related to really punch up the way it sounds. And what some people try to do is get one sound to sound the way a layered sound sounds, and what ends up happening is, you lose something. Whereas when you just have multiple things going on doing the same thing, you're really able to get something really clean sounding, but also with a really big sound. And that's really what you're looking for here. So what you want to do to get a sound like this is the first thing you'd think, oh, well, if I just do 2 acoustics, and then as if, I was being surrounded by acoustic guitar players and have them in both sides of my headphones. And that's what panning is I have, this mostly to the left and this mostly to the right. Oh, that would sound better. And you're right. It does sound better. It sounds a lot bigger, and, it's pretty nice. But that's still like leaving kind of this huge space in the middle. And I mean, let's listen to this alone, because what I was going for is obviously the original of this particular tune was played on a clean electric guitar, or a cleaner electric guitar. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's what that sounds like. And that's just it by itself. But like, when you're going for something that's got a little bit more depth, than the original. And I mean, this is just something that was a hallmark of the time. You really want to just apply the layers, because then when you get to the final product, and this is without any finesse, this is just layering. And you know, it just sounds huge, and it really works to keep, you know, it just sounds rich, it sounds full, it sounds like, you know, you'd want to listen to it over and over and over again, and it really helps accentuate things. And you can still hear me talking over it, which you can actually make a little easier, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, and that's, you know, and the only thing I've got on that right now is a little reverb. I mean, if you take the reverb away, it takes away some of the dimension of it, and that's the only service reverb has. I thought I had that muted, to be honest with you, but it looks like I didn't, so whoops on me. But you know, so reverb is a must for most things, but even if you didn't have reverb, I mean, listen to that. Listen to how much that versus either just this or just... Why is the bass still going? What the heck? Oh, right. Oh, that's fine. Either way, even without the bass, it doesn't make too much of a difference. But, like, you know, you have that. The bass isn't in the beginning anyway, so... Or even just, you know... It's like, it just sounds so much fuller. And that's basic layering. I mean, that's simple. And then you're like, okay, so that's great. But if you do that over and over and over again, you'll end up having these sounds and they'll all jump over each other and it'll be gross. Well, reverb helps with that because it gives a sense of space. You know, obviously all of this stuff is like recorded really close and everything else. But what helps with that is EQ. And I'm going to use the clean guitar as an example here because, and let's just do it by itself, because it's playing right now without the EQ on. And that's really all that's on it. There is a slight compressor on it. I'll turn that off normally, but like even without the compressor, I mean, listen to that. Like, it's like, oh, that sounds grosser and thinner, but you know what? If I have, like, later in the song where there's so much going on, like, this plays through the whole song, and then I have more acoustic guitars, electric guitars, drums, vocals that need to stand out, and that's just not going to work. So it really benefits to have an EQ going, and I want to make sure I emphasize what kind of EQs can do. And I could spend an entire episode on this, on just EQing, and I probably will, but for right now, I want to make it important that when you're layering, you keep in mind that you're doing the same sound over and over again, and certain things will do better with certain frequencies accentuated. So right now, you have that's really full, but the vocals tend to sit in this range over here, which is around 1000 kilohertz. It can vary depending on how high the voice is, but I noticed I was probably being a little drowned out there, and now I'm not being as drowned out just because I removed that. And to kind of make up for that and to add a little sheen, you basically just boost, you know, a little bit higher. Now for a guitar in this style, you really don't want to boost much past 5 kilohertz. I chose 4. It just sounded good. You can sweep this back and forth with most EQs to get a sound that really suits your fancy. And I mean, that just, even if you just did that, that leaves us with this, which already sounds better. One thing that I always like to do is make sure that I've got this going on, which is called a high pass filter. Again, most EQs have this. For most guitars that are going to be hugely layered like this, I basically just make sure that anything below 100 hertz doesn't exist, because if too much is going on in the low end, because the frequencies are smaller and the wavelengths are longer, it'll actually muddy things up and make things sound just really gross. So that's one thing you definitely want to make sure you do, is get your low end tamed and then also your high end tamed. Now, this recording is from a microphone, but if you're using not a microphone and just direct in, it'll have extra stuff going on up here, and you may want to experiment with the opposite of the high pass filter, which is the low pass filter. Naturally, it cuts out all the high frequencies. This one could probably be set even lower. you know, and not really adversely affect anything. Because to be honest with you, once again, above 5K for most rhythm guitar and picking guitar stuff, not really important to have. So that's that. And then this range right here, the reason I took that out is because I have these acoustic guitars that are really nice and rich in that range. And this is too, but, and I mean, this is just to make up for that a little bit. But, and you know, this doesn't really need that because it's supporting these guitar sounds. And if I add the EQ to this, which once again, these are to the side, they're, you know, punched up a little bit. They've got some EQ, I need to leave those on because of the way this is EQ'd. But let me turn these on and you'll get, oh my God. Oh, that sounds so nice and bright. See, I did basically the same kind of thing, but because these are really picked and off to the side, I was able to leave a little bit more of that mid-range in, and this particular track doesn't go through the whole thing. So I was able to leave some of that mid-range in to give it the body it needs, and since it doesn't have, like, the vocals and this are basically the only thing in that register for this part of the song, it was able to be done. So you always have to think of context when imagining what you want to EQ. Again, keeping the low end free for the bass to do its thing and other things like that. But notice that's just a much gentler curve because I wanted the acoustics to be nice and bright. And then, you know, you get the whole sensation of it when you add in the acoustic guitar. So it looks like we're getting toward 15 minutes here, and I didn't want to make these too long. So quick recap on, and this is just the first idea I had for Lapis Lazuli, honestly. It's important to EQ so that way you don't have all of your layers competing for the same sonic space on the spectrum, because obviously I like to think of that as vertical. If you want to think of it like just vertical, like the frequencies go from low to high and you're slotting different things in each thing to like make your building, which is this track. And so I wanted the cleans to carry this sort of mid-high register. These have some more jangle on them because they're an acoustic guitar. It's got some different rules. And so you can kind of get some high end in there to really get it some sheen and some high end. And then you just kind of get this nice big sound. And again, this is really just EQ. And I mean, that just made it a little louder. And that is just EQ and just all the layers here. And this is just 3 layers. You can go nuts. I honestly am just lazy and don't play guitar quite well enough to be worth it my time, unfortunately, because you really do have to make sure you play really in time and really well to make sure that works really well. But that's basically the basics of it. And so if you want to get the sound like I did in Lapis Lazuli, that is one way to do it. And again, and with layering and with EQ, just to, you know, once again, do the sum up here, get your 3 layers, make sure you experiment with the stereo field, which is the panning, which is sort of around, and then also make sure that you have 2 bigger sounds. Definitely want to do that, or have 1 big sound that's being supported, but make sure you kind of think of it in a way with layering as you have the one sound that you feel is important, which in my case was kind of the acoustic, and then have the supporting sound, which was the clean guitar. And the clean guitar really just kind of made me harken back to the old, the original. So that's why I did that. But you don't really, once again, no real rules. These are just guidelines to get you started down the right path. So EQ is important. 1 kilohertz is where the vocals usually lie. 230 to 300 hertz can be really messy when you have multiple guitars going on. And don't really go above 5 kilohertz on electric guitars or even much else, and be careful with boosting high end, otherwise it'll get really disgusting. So yeah, that is a quick guide to just simple layering. I mean, notice this doesn't even sound like the end result. I'm gonna just real quick unsolo everything and show you, you know, like we've got a long way to go before we get here, but we will. So join with me. This is a mega series. It'll probably go over the course of some months. I don't want to, you know, there's a lot of information to take in. So I hope you're enjoying it so far, and This has been Cyril the Wolf for the first lesson on production techniques in this context. Look forward to hearing your comments in the below, and I will link any relevant things in the section description below as well. So have a good day.